the college was launched by Seamus McNeill and Thomas Pearson. And we were fortunate in that the whisky magnate Charles Hepburn of Hepburn and Ross owned the site that we're on today, and they gave it to the college. It was an old warehouse that they had, and they gave it to the college for next to nothing. Charles Hepburn was very interested in putting money back into Scottish culture, and he helped sponsor the World Pipe Band Championships, and he also helped the College of Piping to get started. So that's how we come to own this site in the West End of Glasgow. And we had the old premises redeveloped. In 2003 we did phase 1, and last year we opened this part that we're in today, which is phase 2 of the college redevelopment programme. The college has got a great history of doing work for the instrument all over the world. In the 1950s we instituted outreach schools in North America, which helped greatly to expand music on the music in that continent. Till today we have hundreds of pipers, thousands of pipers in North America and pipe bands, and we like to think that we played a part in that expansion of the music into North America. In addition, the college is a publisher of pipe music and pipe music books, and their tutor book, affectionately known as the Green Tutor, has sold upwards, I think we're getting near 650,000 copies, which for a bagpipe book is easily the biggest selling book in piping history, but it's pretty good, and we still sell thousands of these books every year all over the world. It's the best tutor book for the bagpipe, and it's accepted as the industry standard. So on the foundation of that tutor book and the sales and the income it generates, it's helped us put money into the development of the building here. One other important aspect of our work that people have to take on board is the fact that we are a charity, and we're a genuine charity, not just an outfit that has a name and has charitable number. We actually operate as a charity. Any money that we make from the shop, for example, our college shop, selling books and bagpipes and reeds and that sort of thing, is ploughed back into the college to keep the lessons as affordable as possible. We don't get any support at all from the Scottish Government or from local authority to do what we do. We've tried to get that sort of support, but you always have to have different schemes and scams and all sorts of things to generate the cash. It's a full-time job in itself to do just that. In some ways we believe it's better to operate the way we do at the moment, trying to generate our own money. We're no drain at all on the public purse, and we rely on the goodwill that the college gets throughout the world to keep us going. And through sales and through donations we get, and through students coming from all over to study here. They all come at this time of year because firstly it's the holiday time in most other European countries. I don't know about North America, I'd imagine it would be as well there, but certainly in a lot of European countries, July and August are the big holiday months, so people have got time off work and school, college, university to come to Scotland if they're pipers, they want to study. But of course the big attraction is the World Pipe Band Championships, and a lot of them will be playing tomorrow. So what they do is they say, well, I'll sort of tandem some lessons and playing with a band on Saturday, and they come here and we have them from all over the world. But they have benefit too from our reasonable prices, because it's not just Scots who benefit from it. Any piper the world over can come here for lessons and have a subsidised lesson at the College of Piping. It is really an international centre for the bagpipe. It's not a parochial, even a national thing. It's international. Our books sell all over the world. We do lessons over the internet all over the world, and people come here when they can from all over the world. the college, since it was founded in 1944, has a remit to run a museum within which we will archive manuscripts, music books, photographs, all sorts of memorabilia, instruments and medals, trophies, all associated with the great art of piping. And anybody can come in and they can nosy around for a few hours or however long they like, and we don't make any charge for it. Again, that's part of our charitable status. We've got a fantastic sound library, which we're having digitised at the minute. We have all back numbers of the Piping Times, which is our magazine, which is described as the greatest repository of knowledge in the history of piping. I think it must be, because it goes back to 1948. And we've got reference library, lots of different books to refer to, and seldom do people come in here and not find what they're looking for, you know. I began the pipes purely by accident, purely by chance, when we moved to a tenement flat in Whiteinch in Glasgow. And the man who taught all the young boys in the local Boys Brigade band, he lived 2 floors below me. And we were out playing football one day, and one of the guys said, "I need to go now, I'm going to my pipe practice, a chanter lesson." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Do you want to come?" I said, "No, not really, you know." And went on playing football. But I'll maybe come on Friday, I said, because he took the kids twice a week, you know. So come the Friday, of course, I didn't want to go either. And my mother leaned out of the window and said, "You have to go and see Mr. Ibell." This was his name, Alec Ibell. He said you would go 7 o'clock, get up there and learn something useful, she said. And so we went into Alec's house, and there's a couple of other boys, all kind of snotty-nosed Glasgow. This is 1960. And, you know, backside hanging out the trousers sort of stuff and all the rest of it. And the first thing he did was, a bit of a child psychologist, the first thing he did was pour you a huge glass of orangeade. So before you did anything, you had it, "Oh, right away, I quite like this, you know." So we got this orangeade. And then he had these loads of old bits of chanters and stuff, because nobody had any money, so nobody could afford it. So he knew that he had to give the kids the chanters, the practice chant. That's the thing you learn on, you know. So he gave me this and said, "You show me how to put the fingers on the chanter." And then you got a tutor book, but there was only one tutor book that went round all the boys. And we were told that we had to go and buy a manuscript book and copy it word for word into the manuscript book, and I've still got it to this day. I diligently did that and eventually did it, but so that's just to give you an indication of how kind of low means everyone was in these days, you know. And nobody would have learned if we'd had to pay for it. Because I remember my mother saying to me, "How much was it?" She said, "Oh, it doesn't cost." I said, "It doesn't cost anything." She was relieved and amazed at the same time. So halfway through the first lesson, Alec had a sister who lived in Canada, and she used to send him this maple syrup. And halfway through the lesson, he would bring out this huge spoon. It was more of a ladle than a spoon. He brought out this tin maple syrup. He'd never tasted or seen or tasted anything like it, you know. So he brought out this big spoon with maple syrup. Everyone would get a spoonful of this stuff, you know. So this is great. So of course you went back on the Tuesday and you got more orangeade and more maple syrup. And after about 6 months, you could, you know, you were kind of subconsciously becoming a piper, you know. But you're really only going for the maple syrup and the orange juice, you know. So after a while, a year on learning scales, we then progressed onto a tune at that point. And my first tune was Loch Rannoch. And he had a small set of pipes that he used to train us to blow on. A goose firstly, then a small miniature set with drones, then a half set. And after about a year on the half set, you went up into the full pipes. By that time, you were in the Boys Brigade. You'd left the Life Boys, which was the junior section of the Boys Brigade, and you were in the BB, and you were in the band. And you started to get trips to different places, you know, parades and going to Cowell games and down the Clyde on the steamers and all that, which was tremendous, you know, because, as I say, getting a day out from the streets and stuff of Glasgow was always exciting and good fun, you know, with the rest of the guys. So, you know, really for kids, learning in a band is a great environment because you're with all the other kids. Whereas if you're on your own learning, it's a bit of a lonely struggle as a wee boy or a wee girl learning the pipes on your own, you know. So my advice would always be get kids into bands because it's much more fun and they're more likely to keep it going, you know, over time. But I was very, very lucky because Alec Ibell and the pipe major of the band, Alec McIver, were sticklers for correct technique, absolute sticklers. And Alec Ibell, the first teacher, if you bent your fingers, you know, he would thump them. You know, you would hit them quite sore. It was, you know, you got a rap on the knuckles to straighten your fingers. You had to keep the fingers straight. And more than one boy went home crying, you know, at the end of a rap on the knuckles from Alec, you know. But it was all meant in the best of, you know, intentions to get you to play properly. And as I say, I was very, very lucky. So you always, you know, come 17 when you had to leave the BB, you were leaving the Boys Brigade with what every piper needs, which was solid technique. You know, you could learn the other things about tuning the pipes and the finer points of expression later on, but they're all built on top of this foundation. And that's what the 214 Boys Brigade gave you. And they were world champion, juvenile champions many, many times, and they were a terrific band, turned out great numbers of pipers, and excellent pipers. The pipe major of the Strathclyde Police, probably the greatest pipe major in the history of pipe bands. Ian McClellan was an old boy, as it were, of the 214. Some great drummers too. So it was a great training ground, and we just happened on it purely, as I say, by chance. And once you were 17 and you could go on to other things, I wanted to join a band called Muirhead and Sons Band. Muirhead and Sons were a sawmill company based in Grangemouth, through in the east on the Forth. And I think they started about 1927 when the wife of the managing director thought it would be a great idea to have a pipe band to play at promotions and stuff like that for the firm. That's when it started. Nobody had any money for recreation. It was a form of recreation for the workers, you know, and of an evening they would go and play and get a trip again, maybe get a few extra pounds or whatever, and a meal or something to drink and a bit of community, you know. And they were very famous band. They'd won the World Championships 5 times in a row at that point. And when I joined them in 1970, they were coming to the end of that run. I'm afraid it was downhill all the way from the minute I joined them, right enough, but that's another story. But the pipe major there was Robert Hardy, Bob Hardy, and his son had been in the 214, and that's how I got to know him. And when I became 17, I joined the Muirhead and Sons Band. And I was with Bob Hardy for 10 years. And I went to practices maybe sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a week sometimes when it was running, you run up to a major championship. I don't think there was not once did I go to a practice and not come away having learnt something from that man. Be it about tuning or, expression or making up selections of tunes and all the rest, all the huge amount of stuff you need to learn about the pipes. Bob Hardy was an amazing musician, and his depth of knowledge about all branches of music and his expression of tunes especially, was just something to behold. And just being close to him, it was worth it, because it wasn't always a great time at the band. His wife had died, and he could be quite a short-tempered man, and he was quite shy, and it kind of manifested itself in a kind of short-tempered way. He was kind of brusque, at times, but he had a very good heart. And as I say, just being close to him, if you kept your ears open, you always learn something, just by osmosis, just by being close to him, And that's what I did, so even in the hard times, I said, "Oh, just put up with it, because you're picking something up off the sky all the time." He introduced me to Pibroch, the classical music of the pipes, and I had a couple of years with him. And when the band folded, I started studying Pibroch more closely with Andrew Wright, a pupil of Donald MacLeod's, Bob Brown and Bob Nicol. And Andrew's been a tremendous help, or was a tremendous help to me and many other people too. And he's still doing a great job teaching. And he took me on to the next level, as it were, as a soloist in terms of the classical music. And I decided at that point that the bands had done, all my life I had been in bands up until that point, and it was time now to try and see if I could do something in the solo world, I thought I had a reasonable chance of getting somewhere, you know, and was fairly successful over the piece. And but it's a constant study, you know. You're always learning something about different pieces. It's like any form of the arts, you know. You're always learning something about it if you're doing it properly, you know. And Andy was a great font of knowledge about all the pibrochs, hundreds of them, and nuances to do with them all. It's a lifetime study, really, you know. But I got enough and was quite successful eventually. And about 6 years after going to him, I was lucky enough to get the first gold medal at the Gaelshire Gathering. And that was quite a thrill, because when I think back to what it was like, you know, you came from a Glasgow tenement, no family history of playing the pipes, and then suddenly you're up there and you see all the great names in the piping world that have won these things. And you never think for a minute, you know, from being a wee boy in the boys' brigade playing a couple of 6/8 marches, that you could be up there and have your name alongside of these great heroes of the past, you know, these great men of the past. So when you get the medal, it's quite a special sort of feeling. But then again, the other way to look at it, in some ways it's like passing your driving test, because it's really just a license to start to learn the music in a way. There's so much in it, and too many people, I feel, get the gold medal and don't take their study on from that. They think that they've arrived at that point, and they have to a certain extent, but there's so much more to learn. And I hope I did that, you know, and I certainly, over the next few years, that was 85, and in the subsequent years, continued to work at the music, because I've always held the view that to know the music is more important than any awards that you might get. You know, that's a far greater reward to understanding the music, especially Kilmore Pibroch, than any award. The awards are very important, of course they are, because the competition platform's the only one the piper has, really. But there are some recitals and reasonably well sort of attended and things like that. But basically the main platform for the solo piper is the competition board. So you have to be successful to make a name, to get anybody to listen. But the thing to remember is that the Pibroch tradition, it was once an oral tradition. It was never written down. It was never written down until the late 18th century, early 19th century, when it really started getting into staff notation. Up until that point, it was more passed on by singing. To the master would sing to pupil, pupil would pick it up. The great thing about that is that you got the music, you got the expression. Learning off the page, you can end up playing like a robot, you know. You hear it all the time, I'm afraid. So you don't want that. But the frailties of the oral tradition are that, well, the main frailty is that people forget. People forget, they transmit it, they change it in transmission. So we ended up with a situation where we're trying to play catch up all the time, looking at the old shows, is the fragments that we have, allying that to traditional teaching and coming up with a set of music which people can play and accept. And for that reason, the Pibroch Society was formed in 1905, I think it was, to preserve this music, to research it, to make it available to the public. So it's the main family that to consider would be the McCrimmon family, who are famous legendary pipers. And people generally, there's a lot of conjecture about it, but people generally agree that they elevated this kind of basic raw stuff, some clan chants and, you know, very sort of, what would you say, 3 or 4 phrase stuff, you know, 3 or 4 notes, just repetitious. They elevated it onto another level when they composed very, you know, series of tunes like Lament for the Earl of Antrim and Lament for the Children, and that, you know, these great pieces, classical pieces for the bagpipe. They took it to another level, and they assured the instrument of its future, because without that, if the bagpipe, you know, didn't have something to show it off, then the bagpipe was dead. Why did the bagpipe survive in Scotland when it didn't in the Highlands of Scotland, when it died out almost everywhere else in Europe? Because we had music, we had great music to play on the instrument. That's the difference. And we can thank the McCrimmons for that. And the modern tradition that we have today is really, can trace it right back to that point at which someone said, we have got to compose music for this that people enjoy playing and people enjoy listening to. And the great geniuses that they were, generation after generation, they certainly produced the goods, so we have a lot to thank them for. And this is the great fascination of the bagpipe. It's this chanter to drone sound, you know, and if you can begin to understand that, you can begin to understand the music as well. Especially in pibroch music, which is slow of nature, but when you hear these long notes against the drone, perfectly in tune with the drone, you begin to hear it changing. You hear the drone change to the note, because they should be so full of harmonics that they harmonise with every note in the chanter. I've had classical guys say to me, how can you possibly have that if they're playing B flat and you know, it's going to clash. But not in a properly set up bagpipe. It doesn't clash, which is strange. You'd think it would. But when the instrument's properly set up, it doesn't clash. Like a piano, it's an approximation of tuning. There's no absolutes, it's an approximation. This is a great skill of the piper as well. We are, of course, the greatest musicians on the planet. There's no question about that, you know. Because we've got to get our instrument. We don't hire a guy in to tune the piano up for us, you know, or a fiddler with 4 silly wee strings to muck about with. We've got the whole thing to take care of, you know, so I'm firmly of the view that pipers are the planet's greatest musicians, and the sooner more people wake up to that, the better. Basically, the music's pentatonic, you know, there are 9 notes, and within the 9 notes, in terms of pentatonic, it's quite a lot of variety. But it's a pretty unique product. Some people say it's the key of B flat with the flattened 7th, or it's either E flat with a split octave. Other people say it's modal, blah, blah, blah. One thing is sure, that it is a unique sound. You can pitch it low or you can pitch it high. But within that pitch, you know, it's got to have all the factors. You know, you're talking about a concert pitch chanter. Okay, you could get a flatter one which was on concert B flat on the tonic. Most chanters nowadays are slightly sharper than that. Maybe some quite a bit sharper than that. Older chanters, some of them are pitched below B flat, you know. So you can get them today in concert B flat. But the relationship note to note, the intervals, must still be the same, whether it's down there or up there, you know. And this is the big thing about they say about the modern pitch of the pipe. It's going up all the time and it's beginning to lose some of its quality, some of its character. So there's been a move recently to bring it back down in pitch slightly, to get this depth of sound.